The gunshot that killed Eliza Monroe's husband on their wedding night in the summer of 1878 didn't just shatter her dreams. It shattered something far deeper inside her chest that she feared would never mend. She stood now in the dusty main street of Redemption, Arizona Territory, clutching a crumpled letter from a distant aunt she barely remembered, watching the late afternoon sun paint the desert mountains gold and crimson while her heart felt nothing but gray. The stagecoach that had brought her here from Santa Fe 3 hours ago was already disappearing in a cloud of dust, and Eliza realized with a sinking certainty that she had nowhere left to run from the ghosts that followed her. She was 22 years old and felt ancient. The black morning dress she wore had faded to a dull gray after 8 months of wear, and she knew the respectable women of whatever town she landed in would judge her for not maintaining proper mourning for the full year. But James had been dead for those 8 months, shot by a drunk ranch hand who stumbled into their hotel room thinking it was his own, and Eliza had discovered that grief was not the worst thing a person could feel. Worse was the numbness that came after, the sense that she had died too that night and was just a ghost walking around in her own skin. The letter from Aunt Miriam had arrived 2 weeks ago at the boarding house in Santa Fe, where Eliza had been taking in sewing to pay for her room. The letter said Miriam was getting on in years and needed help running her boarding house in Redemption, and that Eliza would be welcome to come live with her and learn the business. It was not a warm invitation, but it was an escape from Santa Fe where everywhere she looked reminded her of James, of their 3-week courtship, of how happy she had been for exactly 6 hours of marriage before the door burst open and the gun went off and her husband fell at her feet. Eliza picked up her worn carpet bag and started walking down the main street, looking for the boarding house. Redemption was larger than she had expected, with a proper main street lined with wooden buildings, a bank, a general store, 2 saloons, a church with a white steeple, and various other establishments that spoke of a town that was growing rather than dying. The street was busy with people finishing their business before supper time, and Eliza kept her eyes down, not wanting to meet anyone's gaze, not wanting to see the questions in their faces or have to explain who she was or why she was here. "Miss, you look lost." The voice was male and came from somewhere to her left. Eliza glanced up briefly and saw a man sitting on a bench outside what appeared to be a livery stable. He was lean and tall even sitting down, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that were startlingly blue in a sun-weathered face. He wore dusty work clothes and held a bridle in his hands that he appeared to be repairing. "Can I help you find something?" "The boarding house," Eliza said quietly. "Mrs. Miriam Fletcher's boarding house. That would be the big yellow house at the end of this street on the left side. Can't miss it, it has got a sign hanging out front." The man's voice was gentle, and something in his tone made Eliza look at him more carefully. He was watching her with an expression that was kind without being intrusive, concerned without being nosy. She judged him to be perhaps 26 or 27, and there was something about the way he held himself that spoke of competence and quiet strength. "Thank you," Eliza said and turned to go. "Name's Jack Cordell," the man said. "I run this livery with my father. If you need anything while you are in town, you just let us know." Eliza nodded without answering and walked quickly away, her heart pounding. She did not want kindness from strangers. Kindness meant questions, meant getting to know people, meant the possibility of letting someone close enough to hurt her again. She had learned that lesson thoroughly. Love was not safe. Opening your heart was not safe. The only way to survive was to keep everyone at a distance and feel nothing at all. The boarding house was exactly where Jack Cordell had said it would be, a large 2-story building painted cheerful yellow with white trim. A sign hanging from the porch roof read, "Fletcher's Boarding House Clean Rooms. Good food, reasonable rates." Eliza climbed the steps and knocked on the door, and a moment later it opened to reveal a thin, gray-haired woman with sharp eyes and a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. "You must be Eliza," Aunt Miriam said without preamble. "You are late. I expected you on yesterday's stage." "The stage was delayed in Socorro," Eliza explained. "There was a problem with one of the wheels," Miriam sniffed. "Well, you are here now. Come in, I will show you your room. You will be sharing with my other niece, Clara, who arrived 3 months ago. 2 hands are better than one for running this place, and since neither of you have husbands or prospects, you might as well make yourselves useful." Eliza followed her aunt through a tidy parlor and up a narrow staircase. The house smelled of lye soap and baking bread, and despite Miriam's sour demeanor, everything was immaculately clean. Miriam led her to a small room at the back of the house that contained 2 narrow beds, a washstand, a wardrobe, and little else. "You will take that bed," Miriam said, pointing to the one by the window. "Clara is out at the general store right now picking up supplies for tomorrow's meals. We serve breakfast at 6 in the morning and supper at 6 in the evening. Lunch is not included, but boarders can pay extra if they want it. We have 5 long-term boarders right now, all men, all working at various jobs around town. They are decent enough folk, but you keep your distance and act proper at all times. I will not have any hint of scandal in my house." "Yes, ma'am," Eliza said softly. "We do laundry on Mondays, change all the bed linens on Tuesdays, do the heavy cleaning on Wednesdays. The rest of the week is cooking and daily upkeep. I expect you to work hard and earn your keep. Room and board plus $2 a month, take it or leave it." "I will take it," Eliza said. She had no other options, and $2 a month was $2 more than she had now. "Good. Put your things away and come down to the kitchen. You can start by peeling potatoes for supper." Miriam turned and left without another word, her footsteps sharp and quick on the wooden stairs. Eliza sat down on the bed and looked around the small room that would be her home. Through the window, she could see the desert stretching away toward distant mountains, vast and empty and somehow comforting in its indifference. She had come to the right place after all, a place where she could work hard and keep to herself and never have to feel anything again. That was all she wanted now. Just to get through each day without the crushing weight of grief and fear that had been her constant companion since James died. She unpacked her few belongings and went downstairs to find the kitchen. Miriam was there with another young woman who Eliza assumed must be Clara. Clara was perhaps 19, plump and pretty with auburn hair and a friendly smile that faltered when she saw Eliza's expression. "Oh, you must be Cousin Eliza. I am so glad you are here. Aunt Miriam works us half to death, so another pair of hands will be wonderful." Clara's voice was cheerful, but Eliza could hear the desperate edge of someone who was trying too hard to be liked. "Hello," Eliza said quietly, and accepted the knife and bowl of potatoes that Miriam thrust at her. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the scrape of knives and the bubbling of something on the stove. Eliza was grateful that neither woman seemed inclined to ask her questions. She focused on the potatoes, on the simple, mindless task of peeling and cutting, and tried not to think about anything else. At 6 o'clock sharp, the boarders began arriving for supper. Miriam had set the large dining table with plain white dishes, and the 5 men who filed in and took their seats were a varied lot. There was Mr. Peterson, an elderly man who worked as a bookkeeper at the bank, Mr. Harrison and Mr. Grant, who were partners in a freighting business, young Tom Wesley, who was learning the blacksmith trade, and to Eliza's surprise, Jack Cordell from the livery. Jack's eyes met hers across the room, and he nodded politely but did not speak. Eliza helped Clara carry out platters of fried chicken, bowls of potatoes and greens, and a basket of fresh biscuits. The men ate with good appetite and minimal conversation, and Eliza was relieved to see that Miriam kept the meal businesslike and efficient. She did not think she could bear sitting through a long, social dinner making small talk and pretending to be interested in other people's lives. After supper, Eliza and Clara washed the dishes while Miriam went over the accounts at the kitchen table. When everything was cleaned and put away, Miriam dismissed them both to bed. Eliza was exhausted from the long journey, and she fell asleep almost immediately, not even stirring when Clara came to bed an hour later. The next morning began at 5 o'clock with the clanging of a bell. Eliza dressed quickly in the gray light of dawn and hurried downstairs to help with breakfast. The routine was exactly as Miriam had described: cook, serve, clean, prepare for the next meal. The work was hard but not unpleasant, and Eliza threw herself into it with fierce determination. If she worked hard enough, she would be too tired to think, too tired to feel, too tired to remember. Days turned into weeks, and Eliza settled into the rhythm of life at the boarding house. Clara made several attempts to draw her into conversation, to ask about her life before redemption, but Eliza's polite, monosyllabic answers eventually discouraged her. Miriam never asked anything personal and seemed satisfied as long as the work got done. The boarders were respectful and kept their distance, with one exception. Jack Cordell seemed to have a talent for being wherever Eliza was. If she went to the general store for supplies, she would see him outside loading feed onto a wagon. If she hung laundry in the backyard, he would happen to be riding past on his way back from shoeing a horse at one of the ranches outside town. If she sat on the porch for a few minutes of rest after supper, he would be there too, quietly smoking a pipe and watching the sunset. He never pushed, never intruded, never asked unwelcome questions. But he was there, a steady, quiet presence that Eliza found both comforting and deeply unsettling. She did not want to be comforted. She did not want to be noticed. She especially did not want to notice him, but she found herself doing so despite her best efforts. She noticed that he was always kind to his horses, that he had a quick smile for everyone he met, that he walked with a slight limp on his left side that was more pronounced at the end of a long day. She noticed that his hands were scarred from years of working with horses and metal, and that he had a habit of running his fingers through his hair when he was thinking about something. 6 weeks after Eliza's arrival in Redemption, Clara announced at breakfast that she was leaving. "I am getting married," she said, her face flushed with happiness. "Mr. Harrison asked me last night and I said yes. We are getting married next month and then I will be moving to his ranch outside of town." Miriam's face tightened with displeasure. "You could have given me more notice." "Now I will be short-handed until I can find someone else." "Eliza is here," Clara pointed out. "And honestly, Aunt Miriam, she does the work of 2 people anyway. You will be fine." After Clara left the kitchen, Miriam turned to Eliza. "She is right that you work hard, I will give you that. But one person cannot manage this whole house alone. I am going to need to hire someone to help with the heavy cleaning and the laundry. There is a widow woman over on the east side of town who takes in washing. I will talk to her." "I can manage," Eliza said quietly. "I do not mind hard work." "It is not about what you mind," Miriam said sharply. "It is about what is practical. I run a business here, not a charity, and I need to make sure everything gets done properly." Eliza did not argue. She did not care one way or another. More work would just mean less time to think, and that suited her fine. That evening after supper, she was sitting on the back porch steps watching the stars come out when Jack Cordell came around the corner of the house. "Evening," he said. "Mind if I sit?" Eliza shrugged, which he apparently took as permission because he lowered himself onto the steps beside her, leaving a respectable distance between them. They sat in silence for several minutes, and Eliza waited for him to say whatever he had come to say. But he just sat there, apparently content to watch the sky darken and listen to the sounds of the night settling in around them. Finally, curiosity got the better of her. "What do you want, Mr. Cordell?" "Just some company," he said easily. "And call me Jack. Mr. Cordell makes me sound old." "I am not very good company," Eliza said flatly. "I will be the judge of that." He pulled a small piece of wood and a knife from his pocket and began to whittle, his hands moving with easy, practiced skill. Eliza watched despite herself, fascinated by the way the wood seemed to take shape under his fingers. "What are you making?" she asked after a while. "A horse. For Tom Wesley's little nephew. Boy is about 5 years old and crazy about horses." Jack held up the partially finished figure, and even in the dim light Eliza could see that it was beautifully detailed, with the flowing mane and tail captured in miniature. "You are very good at that. Had a lot of practice." "My mother died when I was 12, and my father was not much for talking about feelings and such. I took to whittling to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. Turns out I had a knack for it." He went back to work, the knife making soft, precise cuts. "What do you do to keep your mind occupied, Eliza?" It was the first time he had used her first name, and something about the way he said it, gentle and respectful, made her throat tighten. "I work," she said. "That is enough." "Is it?" Jack's voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made Eliza look at him sharply. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, really. Just that I have noticed you work yourself near to exhaustion every day, and you never smile, never laugh, never seem to take any joy in anything. Makes a man wonder what you are running from." Eliza stood up abruptly. "That is none of your business." "You are right, it is not." Jack did not get up, did not try to stop her. "But I want you to know something, Eliza. Whatever it is that has hurt you so badly, whatever it is that makes you look like you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, you do not have to carry it alone. There are people here who would be your friend if you would let them." "I do not want friends," Eliza said, and her voice came out harder than she intended. "I do not want anything from anyone, I just want to be left alone." "All right then." Jack went back to his whittling. "But I am going to keep sitting out here most evenings, because I like the quiet and the stars. If you want to sit here too, I promise not to bother you." Eliza went inside and closed the door, her heart pounding. She was angry at Jack for seeing too much, for saying what no one else had dared to say, for being kind when she wanted everyone to just leave her alone. She went to bed but could not sleep, and finally around midnight she got up and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. Through the window, she could see that Jack was still sitting on the back steps, still whittling by moonlight. Something about the sight of him there, patient and steady, made the tight knot in Eliza's chest ache in a way it had not ached in months. She turned away and went back to bed, but she could not shake the image from her mind. Clara's wedding took place 4 weeks later on a beautiful October morning. The whole town turned out for the celebration, and Eliza helped Miriam prepare a feast for the reception that was held at the boarding house. She stayed in the background, serving food and clearing dishes, carefully avoiding the dancing and merriment. But when she stepped outside for a moment of fresh air, she found Jack leaning against the porch railing, watching the festivities through the window. "Not one for parties either?" Eliza asked before she could stop herself. Jack turned and smiled at her. "Oh, I do not mind parties. Just needed a break from all the noise. Clara looks happy, does not she?" "She does." Eliza came to stand beside him, and they watched as Clara danced with her new husband, her face glowing with joy. "She is very lucky. You think luck has anything to do with it? What else would you call it? Finding someone who loves you, who wants to spend their life with you, who does not get shot down 6 hours after promising to love you forever." Eliza stopped abruptly, shocked at herself. She had not meant to say that, had not meant to reveal anything, but the words had just spilled out. Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was very gentle. "You were married. For 6 hours." Eliza's voice was flat, emotionless. "We got married in Santa Fe. That night, a drunk ranch hand stumbled into our hotel room thinking it was his own. He had a gun. My husband tried to explain, tried to tell him he had the wrong room, but the man was too drunk to understand. He shot James, just like that. One minute we were laughing and happy and planning our life together, and the next minute James was dead on the floor and I was screaming for help that came too late. God, Eliza, I am so sorry. Everyone is sorry. Sorry does not bring him back. Sorry does not change what happened. Sorry does not fix the fact that I am so broken inside that I cannot feel anything anymore except fear and numbness." She turned to look at him, and there were no tears in her eyes because she had cried herself dry months ago. "Do you know what the worst part is, Jack? It is not the grief. It is the knowledge that I was stupid enough to let myself love someone, to let myself be happy, and this is what it got me. I will never make that mistake again." Jack looked at her for a long moment, and in the lamplight spilling from the window, his blue eyes were very serious. "Eliza, what happened to you was a terrible tragedy. No one should have to go through something like that. But shutting yourself off from the world, refusing to let yourself feel anything, that is not living. That is just existing. Existing is safer, maybe, but it is also lonely as hell." He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused, and Eliza felt something flutter in her chest that she immediately tried to squash down. "You think you are too broken to ever love again. I understand that. But I want you to know something. I specialize in broken things. It is what I do. Broken horses that everyone else has given up on, broken equipment that people think is beyond repair. I am good at fixing things, Eliza, real good, and I do not think you are half as broken as you think you are." "You do not know anything about me," Eliza whispered, but she did not pull her hand away. "Then let me get to know you. No expectations, no pressure. Just two people spending time together, talking, maybe finding some comfort in each other's company. What do you say?" Eliza looked down at their joined hands, at the way his fingers curved gently around hers, strong and steady and somehow safe. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to run, to pull away, to protect herself from the possibility of being hurt again. But there was another voice, quieter but more insistent, that was saying something different. It was saying that maybe, just maybe, Jack Cordell was someone she could trust. "All right," she heard herself say, "but I cannot promise you anything. I cannot promise that I will ever be the person I was before James died. I am not asking you to be anyone but who you are right now," Jack said. "That is enough for me." They stood there together in the darkness, hands clasped, while inside the party continued without them. And for the first time since that terrible night in Santa Fe, Eliza felt the smallest stirring of something that might have been hope. Over the following weeks, Jack kept his word. He did not push, did not demand, did not expect anything from Eliza that she was not ready to give. But he was there, constant and steady, finding small ways to be part of her life. He would walk her to the general store when she needed to pick up supplies, carrying the heavy sacks of flour and sugar without being asked. He would sit on the back porch in the evenings, whittling and talking about his day, his horses, the town gossip, never requiring her to respond but always making space for her if she wanted to. Eliza found herself looking forward to those evening conversations, found herself seeking out excuses to be where Jack was. She learned that he had grown up in Missouri, that his father had brought him west after his mother died, that they had drifted from town to town working at various liveries and ranches, before finally settling in Redemption 5 years ago. She learned that he had been engaged once to a girl back in Missouri, but she had broken it off when she decided she did not want to leave her family and move west. "Did it hurt?" Eliza asked one evening. "When she ended things?" "At the time, yes. I thought I loved her, thought we had a future together. But looking back, I think I was more in love with the idea of her than the reality. She wanted a settled life in a town that never changed, with family all around and everything predictable. I wanted adventure, wanted to see new places, wanted to build something of my own. We were not right for each other, even though it took me a while to see it. Do you ever regret coming west? Not for a single minute. This is where I belong." Wide open spaces, mountains in the distance, every day bringing something new. "I love it here." He glanced at her. "What about you? Do you like Arizona?" Eliza considered the question. "I do not know yet. I came here to hide, not to build a life. I have not let myself think about whether I actually like it or not." "Maybe it is time to start thinking about it," Jack suggested gently. "You have been here almost 4 months now, Eliza. At some point, you are going to have to decide if you are going to keep hiding or start living again." His words stayed with Eliza long after he had gone to bed. She lay awake that night thinking about what living again might look like. Could she allow herself to be happy? Could she allow herself to care about someone without being paralyzed by fear of losing them? Could she allow herself to hope for a future that was more than just getting through each day? The answer came to her slowly, over the course of many more evenings sitting with Jack, many more conversations that ranged from serious to silly, many more moments when she found herself laughing at something he said, and then stopping in surprise because she had not realized she still remembered how to laugh. The answer was that maybe she could. Maybe, with Jack beside her, she could find her way back to herself. It was late November when things shifted between them. The weather had turned cold and Eliza was hanging laundry in the backyard, her fingers stiff and red from the freezing water. Jack came around the corner of the house leading a horse, and when he saw what she was doing, he tied the horse to the fence and came over to help. "You do not have to do that," Eliza protested. "I know I do not have to, I want to." Jack picked up a sheet and began pinning it to the line with practiced efficiency. "My father and I did our own laundry for years before we moved into the boarding house. I know my way around a clothesline." They worked together in companionable silence, and when the basket was empty, Jack turned to her with a serious expression. "Eliza, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen until I am done, all right?" Eliza's heart began to pound, but she nodded. "I have been falling in love with you since the day I first saw you standing in the street looking lost and scared, and so damn sad it broke my heart. I know you are still healing. I know you are still scared. I know you think you are too broken to love anyone ever again. But I am in love with you anyway, and I want you to know that I am not going anywhere. I am not asking you to love me back, not yet. I am not asking you to marry me or make any kind of promises. I am just asking you to keep letting me be part of your life, to keep sitting with me in the evenings, to keep learning to laugh again. That is all. I can wait for the rest for as long as it takes." Eliza stared at him, and for the first time since James died, she felt something crack open inside her chest. It was not the terrible, shattering pain of loss, but something different, something warm and frightening and almost unbearably sweet. "Jack," she whispered, "I am so scared." "I know you are, honey. I know." He stepped closer and very slowly, very carefully, pulled her into his arms. Eliza stiffened for a moment, and then something inside her gave way and she collapsed against his chest, finally letting herself accept the comfort he had been offering for months. Jack held her tight, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft reassurances that she did not need to be strong all the time, that it was all right to lean on someone, that he had her, and he was not going to let go. "They say I am too broken to love," Eliza said, her voice muffled against his shirt. She was not crying, but she was shaking, all the emotions she had kept locked away for so long finally fighting their way to the surface. "Everyone back in Santa Fe, they looked at me with pity and said what a shame it was, that I would probably never recover from such a tragedy, that I was too damaged to ever have a normal life. And I believed them, Jack. I believed them, and I came here to just stop existing, stop feeling, stop everything." Jack pulled back just enough to look down at her face, his hands cupping her cheeks. "Then it is a damn good thing I do not listen to what other people say. I specialize in broken things, Eliza. And you are not even close to as broken as you think you are. You are hurt, yes. You are grieving, yes. But you are also brave and strong and capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for. I see you. I see the real you underneath all that fear and pain. And what I see is worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth everything. What if I cannot give you what you want? What if I cannot love you the way you deserve to be loved? Then we will figure it out together. But Eliza, I think you are already halfway there. I see the way you look at me when you think I am not paying attention. I see the way you smile when I tell you one of my terrible jokes. I see the way you lean toward me when we sit together in the evenings, like you are drawn to me even when you do not mean to be. You are already healing, sweetheart. You are already coming back to life. You just have to be brave enough to let it happen. Eliza closed her eyes and let herself feel what she had been fighting for so long. Jack was right. She was already in love with him. had been falling in love with him a little bit more every day without even realizing it. The thought terrified her, but it also filled her with a wild, reckless hope that maybe she could have this, maybe she could let herself be happy again, maybe the past did not have to define her future. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered, "and it scares me to death." "Good," Jack said, and his smile was bright enough to light up the whole gray November day. "Being scared means you are alive, means you are feeling things again. That is a good thing, Eliza, a very good thing." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and so gentle it made her want to cry. It was nothing like the passionate, desperate kisses she had shared with James during their brief courtship. This was different, slower, deeper, full of patience and promise and the unspoken assurance that Jack would wait for her, would give her all the time she needed to find her way back to herself. When they finally pulled apart, Eliza was breathless and shaking and more alive than she had felt in 8 months. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Now we take it one day at a time," Jack said. "We keep sitting together in the evenings, we keep talking, we keep getting to know each other. And when you are ready, when you feel safe enough and healed enough, we figure out what comes next. There is no rush, Eliza. I am not going anywhere." But the world had other plans. 2 days later, Jack's father collapsed while shoeing a horse and never woke up. The doctor said it was his heart, that it had probably been failing for months, but the old man had been too stubborn to admit he was slowing down. Jack was devastated, and now it was Eliza's turn to be the one offering comfort, holding him while he grieved, sitting with him through the long night after the funeral when he could not sleep for thinking about all the things he wished he had said to his father but never did. "He knew you loved him," Eliza said softly as they sat together on the porch steps in the cold December darkness. "You showed him every day through your actions, through the way you worked beside him, through the way you took care of him. That matters more than words, Jack. I hope so." "God, I hope so." Jack's voice was rough with unshed tears. "He was all the family I had left, now it is just me." "No," Eliza said firmly, "it is not just you, you have me, and I am not going anywhere either." Jack turned to look at her, and in the moonlight his eyes were shining. "You mean that?" "I mean it. You have been there for me through my worst times, helped me start to heal, made me believe that maybe I could have a future after all. Now it is my turn to be there for you." She took his hand and laced her fingers through his. "We are in this together, Jack Cordell. Whatever comes, we will face it together." Over the following weeks, Eliza proved as good as her word. She helped Jack manage the livery while also continuing to work at the boarding house, running herself ragged but refusing to let him struggle alone. Miriam was surprisingly understanding, adjusting Eliza's duties so she could spend part of each day at the livery, and several of the other townspeople pitched in to help Jack through the transition. It was during this time that Eliza discovered something about herself. She was good with horses. Better than good, actually. She had grown up on a small farm in Ohio before her parents died, and she had spent hours as a child in the barn with the horses, learning their ways, understanding their language. She had forgotten all of that during the years she spent moving from town to town trying to make a living with her needle, but now it all came flooding back. "You have got a real gift," Jack said one afternoon as he watched her gentle a skittish mare that had been giving him trouble all week. "That horse has not let anyone touch her without trying to bite them, but she is acting like you are her best friend." "Horses are easier than people," Eliza said with a slight smile. "They do not lie, they do not betray you, and they do not get shot by drunk strangers. If you treat them with respect and patience, they will trust you." "Is that what you are doing with me?" Jack asked quietly. "Learning to trust me?" Eliza looked up at him, and there was something in her eyes that had not been there before, something warm and open and almost like joy. "I already trust you, Jack. That is what scares me so much. I trust you, and I am falling deeper in love with you every day, and the thought of losing you the way I lost James makes me want to run away and never look back. But I am not going to run. I am going to stay and be brave and take the risk because you are worth it. We are worth it." Jack crossed the stable in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that made her dizzy. The mare snorted and moved away, but neither of them paid any attention. They were lost in each other, in the discovery that love could be more than just fear and loss, that it could be a source of strength and comfort and blazing, beautiful hope. Christmas came and went, celebrated quietly at the boarding house with a good meal and small gifts exchanged among the boarders. Jack gave Eliza a pair of soft leather gloves lined with rabbit fur to keep her hands warm during the winter months. Eliza gave Jack a new bridle she had made herself, working on it in secret during the few spare moments she had each day. The leather was tooled with an intricate pattern of running horses, and Jack ran his fingers over it with wonder. "This is beautiful work, Eliza. Where did you learn to do this?" "My father taught me before he died. He was a harness maker, among other things. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed working with leather until I started making this for you." She smiled, and it was a real smile, full and genuine and reaching all the way to her eyes. "I might start taking on some leather work along with my sewing. Lord knows we could use the extra money now that you are running the livery alone." "About that," Jack said slowly, "I have been thinking and I want to ask you something. How would you feel about becoming my partner in the livery business? Not just helping out, but actually being a co-owner, splitting the profits, making decisions together. You have got a way with the horses that I have never seen before, and people are starting to ask for you specifically when they bring in difficult animals. I think we could build something really good here, Eliza, together." Eliza was quiet for a long moment, turning the idea over in her mind. A few months ago, she would have said no automatically, would have been too scared to commit to anything that tied her to another person, another place, another possible loss. But she was not that person anymore. Jack had changed her, had helped her find her way back to herself, and now she could see a future that was bright with possibility instead of dark with fear. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I would like that very much. Partners." "Partners?" Jack agreed, and sealed it with a kiss that promised so much more than just a business arrangement. The new year of 1879 began with a fierce winter storm that blanketed redemption in snow and kept everyone indoors for 3 days. Eliza and Jack spent those days at the livery, keeping the horses warm and fed and talking for hours about their plans for the business, for their lives, for the future they were starting to believe they could actually have together. On the 3rd night of the storm, as they sat beside the small stove in the livery office sharing a simple supper of bread and cheese, Jack said, "I want to marry you, Eliza. I know it has not been that long, and I know you are still healing from losing James, but I do not want to wait anymore. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a home with you, raise a family with you if you want children, grow old with you. What do you say?" Eliza's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to throw herself into his arms and accept the future he was offering. But another part of her, the part that was still scarred by loss and grief, hesitated. "I want to say yes," she said slowly, "but I need you to understand something first. I love James. I loved him with all my heart, and when he died, it nearly destroyed me. I will always carry that loss with me, Jack. It is part of who I am now. If we get married, you are not getting someone who is whole and undamaged. You are getting someone who has been shattered and put back together, and there will always be cracks. Can you live with that?" Jack reached across the small table and took both her hands in his. "Eliza, listen to me. I am not asking you to forget James or pretend that he never existed. He was important to you, and what you shared with him was real and precious. But he is gone, and you are here, and you are allowed to love again. You are allowed to be happy again. Those cracks you are talking about, they do not make you less. They make you stronger, because you survived something terrible and you came through it. I love all of you, including the broken parts, including the scars. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know that you are loved and cherished and safe. So yes, I can live with that. The question is, can you?" Tears were streaming down Eliza's face now, the first tears she had cried since that terrible night in Santa Fe. But these were not tears of grief or fear. These were tears of relief, of release, of finally letting go of the burden she had been carrying alone for so long. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Jack Cordell. I will marry you and spend the rest of my life with you and try my very best to be brave enough to let myself be happy." Jack came around the table and pulled her up into his arms, holding her while she cried out all the grief and fear and pain she had been holding inside. And when the tears finally stopped, when she was calm and quiet in his embrace, he kissed her forehead and said, "That is my girl. That is my brave, strong, beautiful girl. We are going to be all right, Eliza, better than all right. We are going to be happy." They were married in February in the little white church at the end of Main Street, with half the town in attendance. Eliza wore a dress of deep blue silk that she had made herself, and she carried a small bouquet of dried flowers since nothing fresh was blooming yet. Jack wore his best suit and could not stop smiling, and when they exchanged vows, Eliza's voice was steady and sure. Miriam gave them a wedding breakfast at the boarding house, and then Jack drove them to a small house on the edge of town that he had been renting and fixing up in secret for the past month. It was nothing fancy, just 2 rooms and a lean-to kitchen, but it had a good stove and sturdy furniture and a real glass window that looked out toward the mountains. "It is not much," Jack said as he carried her over the threshold, "but it is ours, and we can make it into anything we want." "It is perfect," Eliza said, and she meant it. This was not the grand future she had imagined with James, full of adventure and excitement and passionate intensity. This was something different, something steadier and deeper and in its own way far more precious. This was a partnership built on understanding and respect, and the hard-won knowledge that love was not just a feeling. It was a choice you made every day to show up for another person and work toward a shared future. Their wedding night was tender and careful and full of whispered reassurances. Jack was patient with Eliza's nervousness, giving her time to adjust to his touch, to the intimacy of sharing a bed with someone who was not James. And when she finally relaxed into his arms, when she finally let herself feel pleasure without guilt, it was like coming home to a place she had not known she was searching for. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Jack said, "Are you all right?" "I am more than all right," Eliza said, and she was surprised to realize it was true. "I am happy, Jack. For the first time in over a year, I am actually happy." "Good," Jack said, pulling her closer, "because I plan to spend the rest of our lives making sure you stay that way." The months that followed were busy and productive. Eliza and Jack threw themselves into building up the livery business, and it prospered under their combined skills. Eliza's reputation for handling difficult horses spread throughout the region, and soon people were bringing animals from as far as 50 miles away for her to work with. Jack focused on the shoeing and the equipment repair, and together they made enough money to hire a young man named Billy to help with the daily care of the horses. In May, Eliza discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified at first, remembering how she and James had talked about having children someday, how that future had been stolen from them. But Jack was overjoyed, and his excitement was contagious. He built a cradle from smooth pine wood and carved it with tiny horses running along the headboard. He read everything he could find about pregnancy and childbirth, and he drove Eliza crazy with his constant worrying about her health. "I am fine," Eliza said for the 100th time one hot June afternoon as Jack tried to convince her to rest instead of working at the livery. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, and most of them did not have the luxury of resting whenever they wanted to. "I am strong and healthy, and I will not break." "I know you will not break," Jack said, "but humor me anyway. I love you and I want to take care of you." "Is that so terrible?" Eliza softened at the genuine concern in his eyes. "No, it is not terrible. It is sweet and kind and exactly the sort of thing that makes me love you more every day. But Jack, you have to trust me to know my own limits. If I am tired, I will rest. If I need help, I will ask. But I am not going to spend the next 4 months sitting in a rocking chair doing nothing. I will go crazy. They compromised, with Eliza working shorter days at the livery and focusing on the gentler tasks while Billy handled the more physical labor. And as her belly grew round and her face took on the healthy glow of pregnancy, Eliza found herself feeling more at peace than she had felt in years. She was building a life, a real life, with a man who loved her and a child on the way and a business that was thriving. It was not the life she had planned, but it was good. It was real. It was hers. In early September, a traveling preacher came through Redemption and held a series of revival meetings that drew people from all the surrounding ranches and settlements. Eliza went to one of the meetings out of curiosity, and during the service, the preacher talked about redemption and second chances and how God could bring beauty from ashes. "Some of you here tonight think your life is over," the preacher said, his voice ringing through the crowded tent. "You think you are too broken, too damaged, too far gone to ever be happy again. You think the past has destroyed any chance you had for a future. But I am here to tell you that is a lie straight from the devil himself. God specializes in broken things. He takes what is shattered and makes it whole. He takes what is dead and brings it back to life. He takes what is lost and brings it home. All you have to do is let him." Eliza felt tears streaming down her face, and Jack reached over and took her hand. She looked at him through her tears and saw that he was crying too, and in that moment, she understood something profound. She had spent so long thinking that what happened to James was some kind of punishment, that she was not allowed to be happy again because she had already used up her chance at love. But that was not true. Life was full of second chances if you were brave enough to take them. God had brought her to redemption, had brought her to Jack, had helped her heal and grow and become someone stronger than she had been before. She was not too broken to love. She had never been too broken to love. She had just needed someone who was willing to see past the brokenness to the person she really was underneath. "Thank you," she whispered to Jack as they walked home after the meeting. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself. Thank you for loving me even when I did not think I deserved to be loved." "You do not need to thank me," Jack said, his arm around her shoulders. "Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done. You are my heart, Eliza Cordell. You and this baby are my whole world." Their son was born on a cold January morning in 1880, and they named him Samuel James Cordell, honoring both Jack's father and Eliza's first husband. He was a sturdy, healthy baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair, and from the moment Eliza held him, she knew that her heart had expanded in ways she had not known were possible. "He is perfect," Jack said, gazing down at his son with wonder. "Absolutely perfect." "He is ours," Eliza said softly. "That is what makes him perfect." Motherhood was harder than Eliza had expected, but also more rewarding. Samuel was a good baby, but he demanded constant attention, and Eliza found herself exhausted in ways she had never been exhausted before. But there was joy too, deep and profound, in watching her son grow and change, in seeing Jack transform into a devoted father who walked the floor with Samuel at night when he was fussy and sang silly songs to make him laugh during the day. Eliza gradually returned to work at the livery, bringing Samuel with her in a basket and later in a sling tied to her chest while she moved around the stable. The horses seemed fascinated by the baby, and Samuel seemed equally fascinated by them. By the time he was 6 months old, he was laughing and reaching out his chubby hands whenever a horse came near, and Jack joked that their son was going to be a horseman before he could even walk. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The livery continued to prosper, and Jack and Eliza were able to save enough money to buy the property outright and make improvements to the facilities. They added a second paddock, enlarged the stable, and built a small apartment above the barn where Billy could live. They also bought the small house they had been renting, and Jack began the process of expanding it, adding a second bedroom for Samuel and eventually more children if they were so blessed. When Samuel was a year old, Eliza realized she was pregnant again. This time she was not scared, just quietly happy. She had learned that she was strong enough to handle whatever life brought her, and she trusted Jack to be there beside her through all of it. Their daughter was born in November of 1881, and they named her Grace. She had her mother's dark eyes and her father's easy smile, and Samuel was fascinated by his new baby sister. He would sit beside her cradle for hours, babbling to her in his toddler language and bringing her his favorite toys to look at. The years passed quickly, filled with the ordinary joys and challenges of family life. Samuel and Grace grew into bright, lively children who loved the livery and the horses and the wide-open spaces of Arizona Territory. Jack and Eliza grew more prosperous, buying a piece of land outside of town where they could keep a small herd of horses and breed them for sale. Eliza's reputation as a horse trainer spread far and wide, and people came from as far away as Tucson and Phoenix to buy horses she had trained. Miriam died in the spring of 1884, leaving the boarding house to Eliza in her will. It was a shock, because Miriam had never been particularly warm or affectionate, but the lawyer explained that Miriam had always admired Eliza's work ethic and determination, and had wanted to make sure she was taken care of. Eliza and Jack discussed what to do with the property, and eventually decided to sell it and use the money to build a bigger house on their land outside of town. The new house was everything Eliza had ever dreamed of. It had 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen with a modern stove, a parlor with big windows that let in the light, and a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Jack built it with his own hands with help from friends in town, and when it was finished, Eliza stood in the middle of the empty parlor and cried. "What is wrong?" Jack asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing is wrong," Eliza said, smiling through her tears. "Everything is right. Everything is so right it almost scares me. I keep thinking I am going to wake up and discover this is all a dream, that I am still that broken, scared girl standing in the street in redemption, not knowing where to go or what to do. I keep thinking that I do not deserve this much happiness." Jack pulled her close. "You deserve all of this and more. You have worked hard, you have been brave, you have built this life with your own 2 hands just as much as I have. This is not a dream, Eliza. This is real. This is our life, and we made it together." In 1885, Jack was elected to the town council, a recognition of how respected he had become in the community. Eliza was proud of him, but also amused at how seriously he took his responsibilities. He attended every meeting, read every document, and drove her crazy worrying about whether he was making the right decisions for the town. "You are a good man doing his best," Eliza told him one night after he had spent an hour agonizing over a vote on whether to build a new school. "That is all anyone can ask. Stop worrying so much and trust yourself." Their 3rd child, a boy they named Michael, was born in 1886. He was the biggest of their babies, and the delivery was difficult enough that the doctor warned Eliza she should not have any more children. Eliza was sad about that, but also grateful for the 3 healthy children she had. Samuel was now 6 years old and starting school, Grace was 4 and full of mischief, and baby Michael was strong and healthy and already showing signs of having his father's stubborn streak. As the years continued to pass, Eliza sometimes thought about James and the life they might have had together if he had not been killed. She wondered what he would think of the woman she had become, wondered if he would be happy for her that she had found love and happiness again. She liked to think he would be. James had been a good man, kind and generous, and she believed he would have wanted her to live a full and joyful life rather than spending decades grieving for him. She visited his grave once, making a special trip back to Santa Fe when Samuel was 8 years old. She brought flowers and stood there for a long time, telling James about her life, about Jack and the children and the business and the home they had built. She told him she was sorry she had not been back sooner, but that she hoped he understood she had needed to move forward rather than looking back. "I will always remember you," she said softly. "I will always be grateful for the brief time we had together, even though it ended so terribly. You were my first love, and that will always be special. But Jack is my forever love, and I am so grateful I was brave enough to give love another chance. Thank you for being part of my story, James. Rest in peace." When she got back to Redemption, Jack was waiting for her at the station with the children. He took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms, not saying anything, just holding her while Samuel and Grace and Michael danced around them, demanding to know what presents she had brought them from the city. "I am home," Eliza said into Jack's shoulder. "I am really home." "Yes, you are," Jack said, "and I am so glad." In 1889, Arizona Territory was growing rapidly, and Redemption was growing with it. The railroad had come through 2 years earlier, bringing new businesses and new people, and the town that had been small and quiet when Eliza first arrived was now bustling and prosperous. Jack and Eliza's livery was one of the most successful businesses in the county, and they had expanded to include a freight and delivery service that employed 5 men. Samuel, now 9 years old, was already showing a talent for working with horses that rivaled his mother's. Grace, at 7, was more interested in learning to read and write, and announced that she wanted to be a teacher when she grew up. Michael, at 3, was still too young to show much interest in anything besides getting into trouble and keeping his parents on their toes. One evening in late summer, Jack and Eliza sat together on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the mountains. The children were in bed, the day's work was done, and everything was quiet and peaceful. "Do you ever think about that first day we met?" Jack asked. "When you got off the stage looking like the weight of the world was crushing you?" "I think about it sometimes," Eliza said. "I was so lost back then, so scared and broken and convinced that I would never be happy again. I do not even recognize that person anymore." "I do," Jack said. "She is still there, inside you. She is the part of you that understands pain and loss, that can empathize with people who are hurting, that knows how precious happiness is because you fought so hard to find it. She made you who you are, Eliza. Do not forget her." "I would not want to forget her," Eliza said slowly. "She is part of my story, but I am glad she is not all of my story. I am glad there was more, so much more, waiting for me if I could just be brave enough to reach for it." "You are the bravest person I know," Jack said, taking her hand. "And I am so damn proud to be your husband." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Eliza said, "Do you remember what you told me that night at Clara's wedding, when I said I was too broken to love and you said you specialized in broken things?" "I remember every word of every conversation we have ever had," Jack said. "But yes, I remember that one especially. I was so angry at you for saying that. I thought you were being flippant, making light of my pain, but you were not, were you? You really meant it." "I meant every word." "I could see past the brokenness to the incredible woman underneath. I could see your strength and your courage and your capacity for love, even when you could not see it yourself. And I just knew, that if you would give me a chance, I could help you find your way back to yourself." "You did more than help me," Eliza said, her eyes shining with tears. "You saved me, Jack. You saved my life in every way that matters. And I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my days being grateful for that, being grateful for you, being grateful for this life we have built together." Jack pulled her close and kissed her, slow and deep and full of all the love and passion that had only grown stronger over the years. When they finally pulled apart, he said, "You saved me too, you know. After my father died, I was so lost and alone. You gave me a reason to keep going, a reason to build something more than just a business. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. We saved each other, Eliza. That is what love does." Years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows. In 1892, a fire broke out at the livery and destroyed one of the buildings. No horses or people were hurt, but it was a financial setback that required months of hard work to recover from. The community rallied around them, with people donating materials and labor to help rebuild. and Jack and Eliza were reminded once again of how blessed they were to be part of such a good town. In 1895, Samuel, now 15 years old, announced that he wanted to go to college and study veterinary medicine. Jack and Eliza were surprised but supportive, and they began setting aside money to send him to school in California when he turned 18. Grace, at 13, was excelling in her studies and helping out at the local school as a teacher's assistant. Michael, now 9, was a handful, full of energy and mischief, but with a good heart that made his parents laugh even when he was driving them crazy. In 1898, when Samuel left for college, Eliza cried for days. Her firstborn, the baby she had held in her arms 20 years ago, was now a young man heading out into the world to make his own way. But she was also fiercely proud of him, proud of the fine young man he had become, proud that he had goals and dreams and the courage to pursue them. "He will be fine," Jack assured her. "We raised him well, Eliza. He is smart and capable and has a good head on his shoulders. He will make us proud." "I know," Eliza said, wiping her eyes. "It is just hard to let go." "That is what being a parent is," Jack said gently, "loving them enough to let them go when it is time." The new century arrived with celebration and hope. Jack and Eliza were in their 40s now, with gray streaking their hair and lines around their eyes from decades of laughter and hard work. Their business was thriving, their children were growing up strong and healthy, and their love for each other had only deepened with time. In 1902, Samuel graduated from veterinary school and returned to Redemption to open his own practice. He married a sweet young woman named Ellen whom he had met at school, and they built a house near Jack and Eliza's ranch. Grace, now 20, had become a teacher at the local school and was courting a young lawyer who had recently moved to town. Michael, at 16, was working full-time at the livery and showing every sign of taking over the business someday. One evening in the spring of 1903, Jack and Eliza were sitting on their porch watching the sunset, as they had done countless times over the past 24 years of marriage. It was a ritual they never tired of, this quiet time together at the end of each day when they could talk and hold hands and simply be together. "Do you ever think about where we would be if we had never met?" Eliza asked. "Not really," Jack said. "Because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. You are part of me, Eliza. You have been part of me since the day I first saw you standing in the street looking lost. I knew even then that you were going to be important to me, though I had no idea just how important." "I think about it sometimes," Eliza admitted. "If I had never come to Redemption, if I had stayed in Santa Fe or gone somewhere else, what would have become of me? Would I have ever healed? Would I have ever been able to move past what happened to James? Or would I have spent the rest of my life just existing, never really living?" "I think you would have found your way eventually," Jack said. "Because you are strong, Eliza, stronger than you ever gave yourself credit for, but I am glad you did not have to do it alone." "I am glad I got to be part of your journey." "I am glad too," Eliza said. "So glad. You know, back when we first met, when I told you I was too broken to love, I really believed that. I thought my heart had been so damaged by losing James that it would never work properly again. But you taught me something important, Jack. You taught me that broken things can still be beautiful. That scars do not make you less, they make you more. That the cracks are where the light gets in." "I did not teach you that," Jack said gently. "You taught yourself. I just believed in you until you could believe in yourself." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. The air was sweet with the scent of blooming flowers, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled its lonely song to the rising moon. "I love you, Jack Cordell," Eliza said softly. "I love you with all my heart, with all the broken pieces and the healed parts and everything in between. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for seeing past the brokenness to the person I could become. Thank you for loving me." "I love you too, Eliza," Jack said, pulling her close. "And I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Every moment, every challenge, every joy and sorrow." It has all been worth it to have you by my side." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Eliza thought about the long and winding road that had brought her to this moment. She thought about James and the brief, bright happiness they had shared before tragedy struck. She thought about the dark months that followed, when she had been so lost and broken she had not thought she would ever find her way back to herself. She thought about arriving in redemption with nothing but a worn carpet bag and a heart full of despair. And she thought about Jack, patient and kind and steady, believing in her when she could not believe in herself, loving her when she could not love herself, helping her piece together the shattered fragments of her heart until it was whole enough to love again. It had been a long journey, but it had brought her to exactly where she was meant to be. She had a home, a family, a thriving business, and a love that had proven strong enough to weather any storm. She had learned that broken things could indeed be mended, that grief did not have to be the end of the story, that second chances were real and precious and worth fighting for. She had learned that love was not something that happened to you, but something you chose every day. It was in the small moments, the quiet gestures, the steady presence of someone who saw you at your worst and loved you anyway. It was in the way Jack still brought her coffee every morning exactly the way she liked it. It was in the way he still kissed her goodbye every time he left the house, even if he was only going to be gone for 10 minutes. It was in the way he looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in his world, even after 24 years of marriage. She had been wrong all those years ago when she said she was too broken to love. She had not been too broken. She had just been hurt, and there was a difference. Hurt could heal. Broken things could be fixed. And with the right person by your side, the kind of person who specialized in broken things and saw beauty in the cracks, you could become stronger and more whole than you had ever been before. In 1905, Grace married her lawyer and moved to Phoenix, though she promised to visit often. Michael, now 19, married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring county and brought her home to live on the ranch. Samuel and Ellen had their first child, a baby girl they named Eliza after her grandmother, and when Eliza held her namesake for the first time, she cried tears of pure joy. "We are grandparents," Jack said, his voice full of wonder as he stood beside her looking down at the sleeping baby. "When did we get old enough to be grandparents?" "I have no idea," Eliza said, laughing, "but I like it very much." The years continued their steady march, bringing more grandchildren and more changes. Jack's hair turned completely white, and he finally agreed to step back from the daily operations of the livery, letting Michael take over while he focused on the breeding program. Eliza continued to train horses, though she no longer took on the most difficult cases, leaving those to the younger generation. In 1910, Redemption celebrated its 50th anniversary, and Jack and Eliza were honored as two of the town's most prominent citizens. There was a big celebration with speeches and music and dancing, and at one point the mayor called them up to the stage to say a few words. Jack spoke about how Redemption had given him and his father a home when they were drifting, how the town had supported them through hard times and celebrated with them in good times. And then he turned to Eliza and said, "But the greatest thing Redemption ever gave me was my wife. She got off a stagecoach 32 years ago looking lost and scared and so sad it broke my heart. I fell in love with her that very day, though it took her a while to fall in love with me back. And every single day since then has been a gift. Every morning I wake up beside her is a blessing. Every evening we sit together and watch the sunset is a treasure. She is my best friend, my partner in everything, the love of my life. And I thank God every day that she gave me a chance, that she let me prove to her that she was not too broken to love, that broken things can be beautiful and precious and worth fighting for." The crowd erupted in applause, and Eliza stood beside Jack with tears streaming down her face, not caring that everyone could see her crying. These were happy tears, tears of gratitude and joy and overwhelming love for this man who had saved her in every way that mattered. When the noise finally died down, Eliza took the mayor's offered hand and stepped forward to speak. "I came to redemption to hide," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I came here because I thought my life was over, that I had already used up my chance at happiness, and all that was left was to just get through each day the best I could. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Because this town gave me a second chance. Jack gave me a second chance. And I learned that no matter how broken you think you are, no matter how much you have lost, there is always hope for healing, always the possibility of love, always the chance to build a new life that is just as precious and beautiful as the one you lost. I will be forever grateful to redemption, and to Jack, and to everyone who believed in me even when I could not believe in myself." The applause this time was even louder, and people came up afterward to shake their hands and thank them for being such an important part of the community. It was overwhelming and exhausting and wonderful all at once, and by the time they finally made it home late that night, both Jack and Eliza were ready to collapse into bed. But before they did, they stood together on their porch one more time, looking out at the land they had built their life on, the home they had filled with love and laughter and family. The moon was full and bright, painting everything in silver light, and the air was soft and warm with the promise of summer. "Do you have any regrets?" Jack asked quietly. "Not a single one," Eliza said firmly. "Not one moment, not one choice, not one single thing. This life we have built together, it is everything I could have ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed was possible. I am so grateful, Jack, so grateful for every moment, every challenge, every joy. I am grateful for you most of all." "I feel the same way," Jack said. "You are my heart, Eliza. You always have been, and you always will be." They went inside then, to the home they had built together, to the bed they had shared for over 3 decades, to the life that was so full and rich and beautiful it sometimes took their breath away. And as Eliza drifted off to sleep in Jack's arms, she thought about the scared, broken young woman who had arrived in redemption so many years ago, and she wished she could go back and tell that woman that everything was going to be all right, that the pain would not last forever. That love was waiting for her if she could just be brave enough to reach for it. That broken things could be mended by someone who specialized in broken things, someone who could see past the damage to the beauty underneath. In 1915, Jack and Eliza celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, just the two of them. Their children and grandchildren had offered to host a big party, but Jack and Eliza had declined, preferring to spend the evening alone together the way they had spent so many evenings over the years. 36 years. Eliza marveled as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set. "It feels like it has been both forever and no time at all." "I know what you mean," Jack said. "Sometimes I look at you and I still see that young woman who got off the stagecoach all those years ago. But then I look at our grandchildren and I realize just how much time has actually passed." "We have had a good life," Eliza said softly. "A very good life." "The best," Jack agreed. "And it is not over yet. We have still got years ahead of us, Eliza. Years to watch our grandchildren grow up, to see what Michael and Samuel and Grace accomplish, to keep building this life we have made together. I am not ready to be done yet." "Neither am I," Eliza said, squeezing his hand. "I want to keep going for as long as we can, keep loving you for as long as I draw breath." They sat together as the sky darkened and the stars came out, comfortable in the silence, needing no words to express what they felt. After all these years, they knew each other so well that they could communicate with just a look, just a touch, just the simple act of being together. As Eliza looked up at the stars, she thought about all the nights she had spent looking at this same sky, from so many different places and in so many different states of mind. She thought about looking at the stars from that hotel room in Santa Fe on her wedding night with James, full of hope and happiness and plans for the future. She thought about looking at the stars during those dark months after he died, wondering if she would ever feel anything again besides grief and emptiness. She thought about looking at the stars that first night in Redemption, exhausted and scared and convinced that her life was essentially over. And she thought about all the countless nights since then, sitting on this porch with Jack, watching the stars come out and feeling grateful and blessed and so deeply happy. The same stars, but a completely different life. A completely different Eliza. She was not the girl who had married James in Santa Fe. She was not even the broken young woman who had arrived in Redemption. She was someone new, someone shaped by loss and grief, but also by love and healing and the steady presence of a good man who had believed in her when she could not believe in herself. She was Eliza Cordell, wife of Jack, mother of Samuel and Grace and Michael, grandmother of 6 and counting, successful businesswoman, respected member of the community. And most importantly, a woman who had learned that broken things could be beautiful, that second chances were real, and that love was always worth the risk. "What are you thinking about?" Jack asked, noticing the expression on her face. "Everything," Eliza said. "The past, the present, the future, how far we have come, how blessed we are, how grateful I am for every moment of this life we have built together." "Me too," Jack said simply. "Every single moment." They stayed there on the porch until well past midnight, talking and reminiscing and planning for the future. They talked about Samuel's veterinary practice and how proud they were of the work he was doing. They talked about Grace and her family in Phoenix and how they needed to make a trip to visit soon. They talked about Michael and how well he was running the livery, carrying on the business they had built from nothing. They talked about their grandchildren and how amazing it was to watch the next generation grow up. And they talked about themselves, about the dreams they still had, the places they still wanted to go, the things they still wanted to do. They might be in their late 50s now, but they were still healthy and strong and full of life. There was still time for adventures, still time for new experiences, still time to keep building the life they had started so many years ago. "I want to take you to San Francisco," Jack said suddenly. "I have always wanted to see the ocean and I want to see it with you. We could take the train, stay in a nice hotel, eat in fancy restaurants, see all the sights." "What do you say?" "I say yes," Eliza said immediately. "Yes, let's do it. Let's go see the ocean. Let's have an adventure together." They made the trip 6 months later, in the spring of 1916, and it was everything they had hoped for and more. They stood on the beach and watched the waves crash against the shore, marveling at the vastness of the ocean and the power of nature. They ate fresh seafood and rode the cable cars and walked through Golden Gate Park. They stayed in a beautiful hotel with a view of the bay, and they felt like young lovers on their honeymoon instead of a middle-aged couple married for 36 years. On their last night in San Francisco, they stood on the hotel balcony watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The sky was painted in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, and the water sparkled like it was covered in diamonds. "This has been wonderful," Eliza said, leaning back against Jack's chest. "Thank you for bringing me here." "Thank you for coming with me," Jack said, wrapping his arms around her. "Thank you for saying yes to me all those years ago. Thank you for giving me a chance even when you were scared. Thank you for building this life with me." "I would not have wanted to build it with anyone else," Eliza said. "You are my partner in everything, Jack. My best friend, my lover, my companion through all the ups and downs of life. I cannot imagine what my life would have been like without you, and I do not want to. This is the life I was meant to have, and you are the man I was meant to spend it with." They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and in that moment, Eliza felt like the luckiest woman in the world. She had been given a second chance at love and happiness, and she had been brave enough to take it. She had allowed herself to heal, to trust, to love again. And the life she had built as a result was more beautiful and fulfilling than anything she could have imagined. They returned to Redemption refreshed and full of stories to tell their children and grandchildren. Life went on in its steady, comfortable rhythm, full of work and family and the simple pleasures of everyday life. Jack and Eliza grew older together, their hair turning white and their faces becoming more lined. But their love never wavered, never faded, never lost its intensity. In 1920, they celebrated their 41st wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a couple of great-grandchildren. The house was full of noise and laughter and love, and at one point Eliza stepped outside for a moment of quiet and found Jack already there, standing on the porch looking out at the sunset. "Too much commotion inside?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "Just wanted a moment to think," Jack said. "To look at all this and really appreciate how blessed we are. 3 children, 11 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and all of them healthy and happy and doing well in life. We did good, Eliza. We raised our family right, built a business that has provided for generations, and created something beautiful out of what could have been a tragedy." "We did do good," Eliza agreed. "Better than good. We did great." Jack turned to her and took both her hands in his. His hands were gnarled with age and arthritis now, but they were still strong, still capable, still the hands of a man who had worked hard his whole life to provide for his family. "Eliza Cordell, I have loved you for 41 years, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You are my heart, my soul, my everything. Thank you for being my wife." Eliza felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears, tears of overwhelming gratitude and joy. "And you are mine," she said. "You saved me, Jack. You took a broken, scared young woman and helped her become whole again. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose, a life worth living. I will love you forever and always." They stood there together as the sun set and their family called to them from inside the house. And Eliza thought about how perfect this moment was, how perfect her life was, how grateful she was for every single day she had been given. She thought about that scared young woman who had arrived in redemption 42 years ago, convinced she was too broken to ever love again. And she wished she could go back and tell her not to be afraid, that everything was going to work out better than she could possibly imagine. But she could not go back, and she would not want to even if she could. Because every moment of pain, every moment of fear, every moment of doubt had led her to this perfect life, this perfect family, this perfect love. It had all been worth it. Every single moment had been worth it to end up here, in Jack's arms, surrounded by the family they had created together, looking out at the sunset over the land they had built their life on. She was Eliza Cordell, and she was not broken. She had never been too broken to love. She had just needed someone who specialized in broken things, someone who could see past the cracks to the beauty underneath, someone patient enough to wait while she healed, someone strong enough to believe in her when she could not believe in herself. She had found that someone in Jack Cordell, and together they had built a life that was proof that second chances were real, that love could heal even the deepest wounds, and that broken things, when mended with care and patience and love, could become even more beautiful than they had been before. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky and their family called them inside for cake and more celebration, Jack and Eliza walked hand in hand back into the warmth and light of their home, grateful beyond words for the life they had built together, for the love that had sustained them through all the years, and for the knowledge that they would face whatever time they had left side by side, just as they had faced everything else. The story that had begun with pain and loss and a young woman convinced she was too broken to love had become a story of healing and hope, and a love that had proven stronger than fear, deeper than grief, and more enduring than time itself. It was a story with a happy ending, the kind of ending that Eliza had stopped believing was possible all those years ago, but that had come true anyway, proving that sometimes the best things in life come when you are brave enough to take a chance on love, even when everything in you is screaming that it is too risky, too scary, too dangerous. But love was always worth the risk. That was what Eliza had learned. Love was always, always worth the risk. And she would spend the rest of her days being grateful that she had been brave enough to learn that lesson, grateful for Jack who had taught it to her, and grateful for the beautiful life they had built together from the broken pieces of her past. They lived on for many more years, growing old together in the house they had built, surrounded by their family, sustained by their love for each other. And when the time finally came for them to say goodbye, they went peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they had lived well, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that would endure for generations to come. The end of their story was really just the beginning of countless other stories. Stories of children and great-grandchildren who had been shaped by their example of steadfast love and unwavering commitment. Stories of a business that had been built on hard work and integrity and had provided for multiple generations. Stories of a town that had grown and prospered in part because of their contributions and their dedication to making it a better place. But most of all, it was a story of hope. Hope that no matter how broken you think you are, there is always the possibility of healing. Hope that no matter how much you have lost, there is always the chance to build something new and beautiful. Hope that love is real and powerful and worth fighting for, even when everything seems hopeless. It was a story that began with a gunshot and a tragedy, with grief and loss and a young woman who thought her life was over. But it became a story of second chances and new beginnings, of a man who specialized in broken things and a woman brave enough to let him try to fix her heart. It became a story of a love that grew slowly and steadily, built on trust and patience and the simple act of showing up for each other day after day, year after year. And in the end, it became a story of a life well lived, a family well loved, and a legacy that would endure long after both Jack and Eliza had passed from this world into the next. It became proof that broken things could be mended, that scars could be beautiful, and that sometimes the best love stories are the ones that almost never happened because someone was brave enough to take a chance, patient enough to wait, and wise enough to see that what looks broken might just need someone who specializes in putting broken things back together.